do not touch the button. What can I say? When I'm told not to touch something, I can't help but touch it. And many things can go wrong with buttons, so here's a tutorial to learn how to use buttons in Astroneer. And this is gonna help us in our automation. Keep in mind that Astroneer calls buttons repeaters. So I'm qualified to teach about this topic because I was a repeater myself at school. I repeated so many classes. Okay, first of all, let's warm up. So let's try the easiest button, the like button. Hit it right now to warm up. And you may consider subscribing as well if you don't want to miss my weekly Astroneer content. Okay, jokes apart, let's start with something that these buttons have in common. These repeaters have much in common, but also different uses. Otherwise, they wouldn't have made many, right? What do they have in common? Well, all of them can be placed to the ground, even vertically, but cannot be sticked to anything, unlike the sensor that I explained in my preceding video. And they can all be placed in a tier 1 slot. You can also activate them by means of another button or sensor, and we'll have some practical examples later on. The proximity repeater is a bit asocial, so it's a bit different, but all of the other repeaters have the following in common as well. You can attach tier 1 objects on top of them, and they all have a pin that can be pulled out to activate items. You can get creative and place additional auxiliary segment pins to tidy up your connections, but be aware that only the target pin activates items, while the auxiliary pins cannot. But from the auxiliary pins, you can drag many target pins that can activate multiple items at the same time. Now let's get into these repeaters one by one and discuss their specific features. And isn't it hilarious that if you stack them on top of each other and jump on them, you're going to become a repeater yourself? It must be what they call the proximity effect. Proximity repeater. This is the latest addition to the game and it works like this. Aim at it and keep the F key pressed to activate all the items around it. Those items must be into its green area in order to be activated. Very unfortunate in this period of social distancing. What a bad time to be burned, little proximity friend. And of course you can use it to activate other repeaters as well. For example, here's how to make a compact clock or timer. Basically a small contraption that regularly emits a signal. Place a delay repeater on the ground, set it to 25, as we will see later, and place a proximity repeater on top of it. Start the proximity repeater that will activate the delay. After some time, the delay will activate the proximity repeater that will in turn trigger the delay repeater in an infinite loop. Place this thing next to plant that produces byte samples and you will get an infinite byte farm. Very simple, but of course a bit slow, unless you make 1,000, I'm just saying. We're going to see another application for this circuit later on in the video, but if you want to see a serious infinite byte farm, check my video down in the description later on. Button repeater. It works exactly like the proximity repeater, but it's more aware of social distancing, so instead of activating items next to it, you need to attach its pin to the items that you want to activate. Well, you could also just attach them directly on top of it. A very common way to use it is to make use of one button repeater to activate two things at the same time, like for this auto arm and research chamber. Delay repeater. This repeater cannot be activated directly, but must be activated by another button. As we noticed in our first example earlier, a delay repeater works just like a button repeater, but it adds some delay before it sends the signal out. You can decide the amount of delay by aiming and pressing the F key once. Just drag the cursor. The higher the number, the more delay will be introduced. We can raise the bar up to 25 ticks. Here we're not talking about seconds or milliseconds but game ticks. They may have different duration depending on the hardware of your console, so ticks are used instead of real-life seconds. Stack them on top of each other to extend the duration of the delay. This is what they do in Italy with public transportation. I mean, that's the only reasonable explanation for the massive delays we get here. Here's an example. Our proximity repeater activates both delays at the same time, but the one set to 5 ticks sends the signal out much earlier than the one set to 25 ticks. Count repeater. The count repeater will send out a signal only after it's been activated a specific number of times, at least 2. Just like the delay repeater, it cannot be activated directly but must be activated by another button or sensor. Here's a little example. The button repeater activates the count repeaters at the same time. Nothing happens yet, but we can tell they started to count thanks to these lights on top. If we trigger it once more, we get a signal from the one set to 2, but only after 8 clicks we get a signal from the one set to 8. If we connect the timer that we made earlier with this setup and some canisters, we can make a cool drum machine. This reminds me of my first video ever on YouTube. Let me know in the comments down below if you would like to see a tutorial on how to make music in Astroneer. I love drum machines, but now back to business. You can even get bigger numbers by stacking the counter repeaters. For example, you can get a signal after 10 times by stacking a repeater set to 2 and one set to 5, since 2 times 5 equals 10. Oh, I'm so good at math, I have no idea why I had to repeat so much. These are the basic information that I wanted to share with you guys about repeaters. If something is not clear, just repeat the video. If you would like to see a more complicated use of these items, feel free to watch my video about the vending machine that gives you the exact number of resources that you ask for. Also, I have a video that talks about the sensors in Astroneer. Feel free to check it out, you'll find the link in the description. If you learn how to master repeaters and sensors, you can be a real pro Astroneer. This is Kuya Game, subscribe for weekly Astroneer contents if you wish. See you next week and stay safe. Do not touch the button.